Somewhere in the southern Iraqi desert, in a place with no name on any civilian map, a United States Army tank commander named Captain H.R. McMaster is looking at his thermal sight and seeing something that makes his stomach drop. Not because he is afraid, because of the sheer scale of what is in front of him. Across a shallow depression in the featureless desert, the thermal imaging system in his M1 A-one Abrams is painting white shapes against a black background. Dozens of them, then more. Iraqi tanks, armored personnel carriers, air defense vehicles, and artillery pieces, all of them belonging to the Tawakalna Division of the Republican Guard, the most experienced, best equipped, most battle-hardened armored force in the entire Iraqi military. There are approximately 800 Iraqi armored vehicles waiting in that depression. McMaster has 9 tanks. What happened in the next 23 minutes has been studied at every major armor school in the world in the 30-plus years since. It is called the Battle of 73 Easting, named for the map grid coordinate where the fighting began. And it is, by almost any military measure, the most one-sided tank battle in the history of modern warfare. But the numbers alone do not tell you what it was actually like to be inside one of those vehicles when the desert exploded. The Tawakalna were not amateurs. They had fought for 8 years in the Iran-Iraq War. Their tank crews were experienced. Their positions were prepared. They had chosen their ground carefully, dug their vehicles into hull-down positions that exposed only the turret, and waited. The Republican Guard had been told repeatedly by Baghdad that the Americans would not come through the featureless open desert to their west. The terrain was considered impassable. No army, the Iraqi commanders believed, would try to move an armored force at speed through a featureless wasteland with no roads, no landmarks, and no logistical infrastructure. They were wrong about that, and the reason they were wrong has a name. It is called the left hook. General Norman Schwarzkopf's plan for the ground war was built around misdirection on a massive scale. While the world watched Marines massing near the Kuwaiti border and naval forces positioning offshore for what looked like an amphibious assault, the heavy armored divisions of the United States Army were moving west, hundreds of kilometers west, further into the desert than any Iraqi planner had modeled. The idea was to swing around the entire western flank of Iraqi defenses, bypass the prepared positions entirely, and come at the Republican Guard from a direction they had not fortified and did not expect. When McMaster's Eagle Troop of the 2nd Armored Cavalry Regiment crossed the line of departure on the morning of February 26th, they were the leading edge of that hook, and they were moving fast. The weather that day was some of the worst of the entire war. A shamal, a seasonal desert windstorm, had pushed visibility down to near zero in places. Sand and rain mixed into a gray curtain that reduced the horizon to a few hundred meters for the naked eye. For conventional warfare, that weather was catastrophic. For Eagle Troop, it was almost an advantage, because the M1 A-one Abrams did not use the naked eye. Its thermal imaging system saw heat, not light, and the thermal signature of a diesel engine in a cold desert night is as bright and clear as a bonfire. The Iraqi tanks, sitting in their prepared positions, engines running to keep crews warm in the miserable weather, were glowing on every American thermal screen for kilometers before the shooting started. McMaster later described the moment of first contact as almost surreal. His troop crested a low rise in the ground, and suddenly every thermal sight in every tank lit up simultaneously. The radio discipline that had been drilled into those crews for years held for about 3 seconds. Then everyone started talking at once. McMaster's gunner, Sergeant Craig Koch, identified the first target, a T-72 tank at a range of approximately 1,800 meters, and destroyed it before McMaster had finished issuing the fire command. Koch later said he did not wait because there was nothing to wait for. The target was there. The shot was clear. Everything else could catch up. In the first minute of the battle, Eagle Troop destroyed more than 24 Iraqi vehicles. The Tawakalna crews, shocked by contact coming from a direction and at a speed they had not anticipated, tried to respond. Some of them did everything right. They traversed their turrets, they acquired targets, they fired. They hit nothing. The T-72's gun was a capable weapon, but engaging a moving Abrams at combat range, in poor visibility against crews that had trained for exactly this scenario for years, was a problem the Tawakalna could not solve in the time they had. The Abrams was also absorbing hits. Rounds struck the armor and did not penetrate. One tank in Eagle Troop was hit directly by a T-72 main gun round, and the crew felt a heavy shudder and kept fighting. The driver later said it felt like someone had hit the tank with a very large hammer. That was all. The disparity came down to three things: training, technology, and the absolute shock of the unexpected. The American tankers had spent years at the National Training Center in the Mojave Desert fighting simulated battles against the most realistic opposing forces the Army could construct. They had lost those battles many times. They had been brutalized in training so that combat would feel familiar rather than overwhelming. When the real thing arrived in that Iraqi desert on February 26th, the muscle memory was already there. McMaster's crews did not have to think about what to do. They had already done it hundreds of times. By the time the sun began to drop toward the horizon that evening, the Battle of 73 Easting was over. The Tawakalna Division had lost somewhere between 300 and 400 armored vehicles. Eagle Troop had lost 0 tanks. Not one American tanker was killed. The engagement had lasted less than 40 minutes from first contact to the last burning vehicle. Military historians who have since modeled the battle using computer simulations have consistently found that the outcome was not guaranteed by technology alone. Run the same engagement with the same equipment but swap the training levels, and the results change significantly. What happened at 73 Easting was not just a hardware victory. It was the product of years of institutional investment in the human beings inside those machines, and on that afternoon in a nameless Iraqi desert, that investment came back with interest. H.R. McMaster went on to become a 3-star general, a national security advisor, and one of the most influential military thinkers of his generation. He has spoken and written about 73 Easting many times. He has never described it as a glorious thing. He has described it as a necessary thing. There is a difference, and the men who were there understand it in a way that is difficult to explain to anyone who was not.